Hi, this is Sean from Punch Technology, and today I'm going to talk to you about storage options. We offer a huge amount of choice of storage devices on our website, and it can be confusing to know which one is the right choice for your PC or your application. So let's go and explore the choices, and I'll try to explain the differences, and hopefully you'll be able to have a good understanding from this video of which device to choose for your particular build. I'm going to choose an overclock gaming range of PCs, and let's choose the Corsair Build It Beautiful. The only reason I'm choosing one of the higher end systems here is because the higher end motherboards have the full selection of storage devices. Remember that our configurator will not show devices that are not compatible. So if you have an entry-level system, entry-level mainboard, you may not have all of the storage choices. So I've just scrolled the configurator down to the storage section, and I'm going to just try to explain, because there's a huge list here of drives. I'm going to try and explain a little bit about how the system works. Our configurator will order the product in price order. So at the top we have the cheapest device, and they progressively get more expensive. The more expensive can mean that perhaps you get more storage, and it can also mean that you get perhaps a little bit higher performance. So how do we differentiate the performance of drives? Well, at the entry level you have standard hard drives, and this is an example here. Now they come in different performance levels, but the performance is still relatively poor. Even the 7200 RPM drives, they might be slightly faster than some of the 5400 RPM drives that you see available. That's the speed that the disk spins. But relatively speaking, they're all relatively slow. If you have a solid state drive, and they are termed as SSD, they are very much quicker, maybe 10 times the performance of the hard drive. But you get a very small capacity, maybe a tenth of the capacity of the hard drive. And therefore there's a trade-off between performance and capacity. There are different types of SSD, and there are even drives that combine SSD with hard drive technology. So it can be confusing to work out what's the best value and which drive should you use for your build. As a rule of thumb, solid state drives will be around 10 times the speed of a normal hard drive. The SATA drive is available in a 2.5-inch format, so that is the same format you would get a traditional spinning disc. It has a SATA cable that links it into the computer's main board. Or this format, M.2. What that means is it's a small set of chips on a PCB that plug into the main board directly, and they can give higher performance, but beware, because the SATA varieties use the same interface as these 2.5-inch versions, so they won't give you a higher performance. So the performance of these two will be very similar. The ones that will give you a higher performance are called NVMe, and they will give a far faster performance than the SATA varieties of M.2. So if you're after high performance, look for an NVMe M.2 drive. They are the pinnacle of SSD performance. In between an SSD and a hard drive, you have a hybrid drive. These are a traditional spinning disk 1 terabyte drive, It also includes a small amount of SSD, maybe 8 gigs, typical. So they can be significantly faster than a normal hard drive because they cache some of the data that goes back and forth to the drive. They put that on the SSD. The frequently used applications, frequently used files will be stored on the SSD portion of the drive, and that can give the appearance that the performance is almost as fast as an SSD, as long as you're using the same applications and repeating the same things. So when the system's booting up, for example, it can use the same files over and over, and they can come from the SSD. If you're using very large files and you're using them not necessarily on a regular basis, then it of course has to go to the disk to fetch them, in which case it's going to be the same performance as regular disk. So if you're doing photo editing, video editing, where you're dealing with large files on a daily basis, it's not going to boost the performance greatly over that of a traditional disk. If you're using the PC for general office work and for Excel and Word documents and things like that, it will make the PC feel significantly faster, up to 5 times faster than a hard drive, but not quite the performance of an SSD. As we go up the performance spectrum and the price spectrum here, you'll find some of these Samsung Evo, and there's also a Samsung Pro. If you're looking for the absolute pinnacle of performance, these are M.2 NVMe drives, but they are the best on the market right now. These numbers in brackets we give after the drive name, they give the read and the write speeds on the disk, and you can see that these are tremendously higher than a traditional SATA SSD. I'd like to also mention the Barracuda Pro drives. You'll have noticed perhaps that we sometimes have the same capacity of hard drive in Barracuda Pro and Barracuda. The Barracuda Pro drives are a better specification of drive, and they're manufactured to more like a server grade. They're designed for much heavier duty cycles, and you also have this 2 years rescue data recovery. So if the drive does fail, Seagate will do their best to rescue that data for you. It's not 100% promise, because if the data is totally destroyed, then nobody can get it back. But they will send the drive to a lab, data recovery lab, and the most advanced tools will be used to try to recover the data from that drive. Once you've selected a primary drive, which I would always recommend that you use a solid state drive for a primary drive. If you can't afford one of the NVMe type drives, then just use a standard solid state drive, and then click add another, and that will pop this secondary drive option box into your configurator, and from here you can then select a further drive. So most customers will want to configure a solid state drive as the primary drive and a regular hard drive with a very large capacity as the secondary drive, and that will give the best of both worlds. If you have to stick with a single drive, then think about how much data you're going to be needing to store. If it's not a huge amount, then use an SSD. If it's going to be quite a lot, then use one of these Seagate FireQders, because those hybrid drives will give you the best of both worlds. If you can't afford a separate SSD and a separate hard drive, then this gets you to a kind of halfway house. So choose that. Thank you very much for watching.